Melbourne is a city that has something for everyone. In my case, it's gardens and historic homes. I was in Melbourne for a conference and then added the weekend so I could explore a bit. Close by to where the conference was being held were the Fitzroy Gardens in East Melbourne. The area for the public gardens was established in 1848 and it was named after the Governor of the colony of New South Wales, Sir Charles Fitzroy. He had a few other places named after him in Australia as well. The first part of the garden I came across was the conservatory. It was opened in 1930 and was constructed in the Spanish mission style that was popular at the time, thanks to American movies. Inside the conservatory, it was gorgeous with all the spring colours, just beautiful to wander around. I went and had a look at Cook's Cottage. Its claim to fame had been that Captain James Cook, who mapped the east coast of Australia and claimed the land for Great Britain, had lived in this house. There seems to be some doubt, as his parents built the house after James had left home, so the name has been adapted to Cook's Cottage rather than the previous Captain Cook's Cottage. It is the original house that Captain Cook's parents had built in Great Ayton, North Yorkshire in 1755. It ended up in Australia as in the early 1930s. The house was put up for sale and a Melbourne philanthropist named Sir Russell Grimwade bought the cottage, had it taken apart brick by brick and then packed into cases and barrels and shipped to Melbourne. Cuttings of ivy were even taken around the house and replanted around the cottage once it was rebuilt in the Fitzroy Gardens. Grimwade donated the cottage to the people of Melbourne. Melbourne has cold winters, so European-style trees work very well, including this lovely avenue. I quite like the model Tudor village, which was donated to the City of Melbourne by a British pensioner, Edgar Wilson, who modelled these villages in cement as a hobby. He lived in Norwood, London, and presented this one to the City of Melbourne in appreciation of Melbourne's generosity in sending food to Britain during World War II. The village was opened by Melbourne's Lord Mayor in May 1948. The following day I set off to visit two National Trust properties. Melbourne has some quite substantial buildings and homes thanks to the wealth that was created by the mid-1800s through the gold that was found nearby. Both properties were a tram ride away. I decided to visit the furthest one away first. The estate is called Ripponlea. I have a South Australian National Trust membership and this can be used in other states as well as the UK, so entrance to the property was free. The land was bought in 1868 by Sir Frederick Sargood and he built the house and established the large garden. Sir Frederick was quite wealthy. He made his money on the goldfields, not through mining but by selling goods to the miners. Tours of the house can only be made with a guide. The entrance hall has a sample of the restored gold leaf wallpaper that Sir Frederick had hung throughout the house. By the 20th century, the wallpaper had turned black and the final owner thought the house was too dark, and rather than removing the wallpaper, she had it painted cream. The National Trust has restored a section by the main entrance. It must have been amazing to see the house in its Victorian splendour. The living room is a good example of the 1930s renovation. Lots of pale decor. Upstairs, the final owner had a ballroom installed and the Melbourne Central Business District can be seen from the ballroom balcony. The estate can be rented out for events. On this day, there were people setting up for a 40th birthday on the side veranda. The swimming pool, which was also installed in the 1930s, can be used for functions as well. The gardens cover an area of 14 acres with sweeping lawns, a lake, a fernery, as well as an orchard. It's a beautiful property in what's now suburban Melbourne, just off a busy road. The second National Trust property I visited was Cornwall House. Getting there involved a tram trip back towards the city, then a change of trams, always the risk of catching the wrong one, thankfully not this time, and I managed to get off at the correct stop. The original estate was much larger and it went all the way down to the river. That part of the estate is now a playing field. Cricket was being played there on the Saturday I looked down to the river. The gardens are much smaller than Ripponlea's, as there's only 5 acres. Still, it does have the English-style plantings of rhododendrons and rolling lawns. The original owner named the house Cornwall, as he thought the local area looked like Lake Cornwall in Italy. Spoiler, it doesn't. There's no mountains for a start. The house was built in 1847, so it's older than Ripponlea, for a Supreme Court justice. It was then sold a few times until 1864, when it was bought by Charles Armitage and his family, who owned it for the next 95 years until it was sold to the Victorian National Trust in 1959. The outside of the house is looking a little bit tired and there are restoration projects going on at the moment. There's a cafe on the grounds called The Stables, and that Saturday seemed to be a very popular location for afternoon tea. After refuelling at the Stables Cafe, it was back to Toorak Road and the tram back to the city centre, thus completing my historic homes and gardens day in our big wide world.